Welcome to the Keelhauled podcast. I'm your host, CaptainLogun, and we've got a lot of Sea of Thieves news to cover today. So tie yourselves to the mast and hold fast. Ahoy there, pirates. I hope you had yourselves a good week and a good weekend. I know I did. This week, we are waiting for the impending patch. In fact, this patch is probably already out if you are listening to this on Monday. Now, I don't know if it's going to go well. I don't know if it's going to go poorly, but we're going to be talking about some of the stuff that came in Season 11. Plus, I want to talk about Skull and Bones because it seems to be affecting a few people out there in the YouTube verse, in the Twitter verse. And I just want to talk a little bit about that, as well as some true achievements notifications that we got recently. All that and more in this week's episode of Keelhauled Podcast. All right, pirates, before we do that, let's get into the Patreon call out for this episode. I want to shout out everyone that went over to patreon.com/Keelhauled Podcast to show their support for this content. So thank you to People's Republic, L Cute, Balls, Blue Turtle V1, Captain Chonky, Captain Hatchet, Captain Hayes, Captain Longshards, Chateau Neuf, Super Pack, Zombie Killer, Cloud, Cosmic Johnson, Static Mirror, Iron John, Davram TV, El Jefe Esteban, Fergatron, Godhammer 6, I'm Dependent Now, Jorby Jorbs, J Hood, Carl Embo, Kazia the Aficionado, Cryptic Slayer, Lumpy SRQ, Evil Morpheus, Space Admiral Ors, Xbox Mike 29, Murphy Lives, Mutinous Max, Nipperkim, Norwegian, Raja the Brave, Registella the Brony Pirate, Replicated Flame, Rustbelt Kid, Skamelt, 666, Captain Dasm, Tommy D, TN Professor, Real Big Tuna, Big Bad Pad, Adorabold, Mina Fairy, Anthony N. Jr., Captain J. Rat of the Flaming Cold Sore, The Lore Chronologist Deadeye Dre, Hegger Owl, Jeff H., Evil Martha, Peter Miller, Rooski Doo, Thor Von Blitz, Luke Lore, The Insipid Ghost, and Zam Wow. Thank you all so much for your love, for your support. And yeah, let's get into this episode.
Just a reminder for you pirates out there, we got ourselves a nice little community weekend coming up. So if you look to your left, you'll see some nice little drops. Those are coming in courtesy of Twitch partners. And if you look to your right, you have free login bonuses and reputation gains. Make sure that you all are paying attention to the overhead signs, letting you know when there are reapers and fleets out there. This has been your pirate service announcement. We let you get back on to your regular scheduled program.
Hey, everyone. I hope you guys are having a good time. You may have heard that there is a patch coming. And if you haven't, then you might want to be aware there's going to be some major downloads coming up. So we are assuming that they mean pretty much like 50 gigs. I actually don't know how big the patch size is. And unfortunately, the patch notes are not going to be out until after this recording. But I did want to talk about some of the stuff that has been going on, because we have actually seen that there are quite a few downtimes this last week. It was kind of surprising to see just how many announcements actually came out as a result of them bringing down the servers and then sometimes not bringing down the servers, but saying they were going to bring down the servers. There was a lot to kind of take into account here. So just to let you all know, the patch is going to be coming in. This is mostly going to affect the back end of Sea of Thieves. There shouldn't be too many changes, but we do know that they are bringing in those sweet loots coming in for the raid of voyages as well. Very excited to kind of see what the new kind of I guess mix of loot is going to be, like how much more they're going to be bringing in, how they took community feedback into account, and just kind of see how things play out. I see if people really jump onto the raid voyages and stuff, because I think for the time being, I think the what's it called? Not the raid, but the Ashen Lords were kind of the thing that I think most people kind of gravitated towards. I think those were kind of like the easiest to kind of knock out since they're not wave based. But it's been definitely very interesting to see how people have been taking the rest of the season 11. I think Falcor put out an interesting video. There was some Sea of Science that came out that basically showed that if you bury loot and you do a dive, that loot sticks with you persistent through the server, or through at least the dive, I believe. And I would just advise maybe against that. It is something that it doesn't seem as though Rare had anticipated that was something that was going to happen as a result of the latest changes to the way loot works and the way dives work. So I would just, if you didn't know about it, don't worry about it. But if you did know about it, I would be careful not to do something like that, because while Rare tends to be pretty relaxed about like bans for things like that, it is something that, you know, I would not get too accustomed to. Just kind of as a little heads up there. Outside of that, though, I am very happy to see that we are getting this patch. I really do. I'm super curious to kind of understand maybe what's going on with it. And I wanted to give a bit of an update to last week's episode, which kind of talked about PlayStation and Sea of Thieves and how that's going to come out, or if we got any news. We didn't hear from Phil Spencer. Well, we did hear from Phil Spencer and the team kind of talking about their update. They came out with a business strategy update, and they announced that yes, 4 games would be coming to other platforms than what's currently available right now. The kind of understanding is that it's going to be 2 games that have been community focused games, and then 2 that are more smaller titles. The rumors right now, which I hate to report the rumors, but these actually make a lot of sense, is that it's going to be Grounded, Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, and Sea of Thieves. So for all intents and purposes, this does not really impact what you all will be experiencing. If anything, you're probably going to run into a hefty amount of new players on the seas that have no clue like how to play the game. And you might see social media kind of pop up as a result of that, with more people kind of talking about like what they're learning or what they're not learning. So I would be, kind of aware of that as you're going in from your day to day. Chances are you probably won't even be able to tell the difference between like the Xbox players and the PlayStation players. But it did call into question, how is it going to work for Xbox players that are playing on console with controller on servers that are just for that play style, the Xbox only servers? Will PlayStation players be lumped in with them? Which I assume is kind of the case, but I imagine the verbiage of those will probably have to change to console players with controller, as opposed to playing with Xbox players with controller. There's also been some interesting discussion kind of around like if we'll see any cosmetics that kind of tie into a PlayStation copy, if there's any kind of thing that might come as a result of that. Given that Hi-Fi Rush has been data mined, we've seen that there have been some t-shirts that can be acquired in there that are kind of alluding to the different consoles that they're going to be made available on, with Nintendo Switch and PlayStation and potentially Epic, as some of the other places that you'll be able to pick up Hi-Fi Rush. With that being the case, and the business update that came as a result of the Phil Spencer, Sarah Bond, and Matt Booty interview with Tina Amini, who's a fantastic journalist over at Xbox now, kind of hearing how they approached it. They didn't want to announce what the games were going to be. Like, they didn't actually want to say which 4 games were actually going to be the ones that were going to other platforms. They said that this was just them kind of expanding the player base, because the industry, if you guys don't know, the industry at the moment has been very volatile. People have been losing jobs left and right. There's been a lot of layoffs. There's been a lot of closures and a lot of games canceled. And the only way to really combat the earnings that they are trying to make, which you have to separate like Microsoft from Xbox, because they operate off of different financial, I can't really explain. I'm not really good at explaining that, but effectively you still have to make money, even if you're part of a very, very high valued company. Because right now, like the value cap for Microsoft is very high, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's how much they've made. That just means how much they're worth. So there's been a lot of like confusion around there. Not that it really matters to people that are playing the game, but one of the things is that the reason why they're looking to do something like this is because it would either be raise the price of the consoles, raise the price of Game Pass, raise the price of games, fire people, cancel projects, close studios, or get a broader audience than who are currently buying and playing the games that you have. So for the start of this, they wanted to kind of say like, hey, we're going to pick 4 titles that have either been out for a while or are smaller titles that we don't mind being on other platforms to try and increase the revenue to be always positive, always earning more than you're spending, because that's how you maintain a healthy company, right? You want to be earning more money than you're actually spending so that you don't go into the red. And that's kind of the impetus of like Black Fridays. You liquidate a lot of old stuff before the new year so that you can try and make sure that you're in the black. But needless to say, I don't think that this is going to impact you all as players in any way. If anything, it might open it up so that you start having folks that aren't in the current ecosystem picking up Sea of Thieves and playing with them. You might start finding that other people that you haven't played with in a while that may be more PlayStation centric have access to it now and maybe jumping in. There's rumors that the Nintendo Switch successor is going to be coming out in 2025, and that the current speculation around like the hardware side of it is that it's going to be somewhere between like a PS4 and a PS4 Pro, or like a Xbox One and Xbox One X. Like it's going to be somewhere around that mid-gen refresh for Gen 9. And if that's the case, then there would be a good argument for a Sea of Thieves port over to Switch, which might bring in a lot more people that were interested. I mean, if you look, for me, it was definitely something that I've always wanted. In fact, it's something that I wanted since 2019, 2018, back before we had things like the Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally, and all those different handhelds. Now that we have those handhelds, it's a little less necessary to have it, but it was always one of those things like in the back of my mind, like it would be cool if we had Sea of Thieves portable that wasn't on our phone, because for the time that that was that time period, phone access and phone like data and stuff was just not reliable enough to really justify it out on 4G. We had 4G LTE, I think kind of sparingly back then. I can't quite remember when we got LTE. And 5G's kind of alleviated a lot of this pain. If you have 5G in a good coverage area, you can kind of do some streaming on your phone. But personally, I don't feel like that has always been the experience that I'd want to have with Sea of Thieves. I'd always want to have like a much nicer experience. But needless to say, having something like a Switch 2, most people generally have 2 consoles. Very few people are just operating off of 3 consoles. And there's a majority of people probably that are just working off of 1 console. So having the folks that are either dual dippers in the ecosystems to get your exclusives, picking up Sea of Thieves as well, especially if they're just like a Nintendo centric person, I think it would be fantastic. I think it'd be really cool, because you look at Diablo, you look at Hollow Knight, there are third-party amiibos out there, and those third-party amiibos, I mean, Blizzard has connections now with Nintendo to get amiibos made. They made that Loot Goblin one, which was a really cool little Diablo 3 amiibo. They haven't come out with a Diablo 4 amiibo. I would love that, but then again, Diablo 4 isn't on Switch, but it could be with Switch 2. And if a Switch 2 comes out and it's powerful enough to run Diablo 4, it's powerful enough to run Sea of Thieves, I don't see why we couldn't start getting some actual Sea of Thieves amiibo. Something better than the what's it called? The Kotaku, or no, not the Totaku. I can't remember what the name of the brand was, but PlayStation or there was a brand of like little figures that were kind of like amiibo, but they didn't serve any function. They just were like the same size and shape and design style, but they had different brands in them. And one of them was the Gold Hoarder. In fact, if I turn around while I'm recording, which is a really dumb thing to do when you're trying to get good audio quality, is I see behind me the little Gold Hoarder figure that I had back in 2019 when I made that video. And I think it'd be kind of cool. I think it'd be really, really fun. I've constantly been asking for Rare to actually produce figures, whether they be, like the 9-inch plastic figures that a lot of companies do for collector's editions. We've never had a collector's edition for Sea of Thieves. This was a brand new IP. They didn't have that much faith in the game to do a collector's edition. You know, we're not getting like smartwatches for Todd Howard here to be able to say like, oh yeah, Sea of Thieves is going to be so good. You're going to get a real working compass. That's Sea of Thieves brand. It's going to be all digital and you're going to love it. You know, we didn't get anything like that. We got other stuff. We got controllers and whatnot, which is still really good, which by the way, where's our other controller? I thought we were going to get another controller. They said on a podcast, we're working towards getting another controller. I don't see any controllers. I don't know what's going on with that. By the way, I'm working on a review, side tangent. Now that I think about controllers, I got a review copy from Turtle Beach for the Stealth Ultra. So if anyone has any questions about that, let me know. I've been playing with one for about 30 hours now, and I'm trying to get more time in on it to kind of feel like what it's like. Some of you guys may have played with me and heard some of the audio quality. So I'm looking for folks to help me test audio stuff with that. Just because I want to get a good gauge on how that actually is represented when playing on Xbox. So that'll help out. Outside of that, thanks to the people that did kind of respond to a lot of the stuff that you guys were talking about, or that I talked about last week. It was nice to see that. I got off on a tangent. What was I talking about? Sea of Thieves on the Switch. Yeah, I'd love to have it. I think it's definitely coming for PlayStation. Probably nothing major to be checking out. But one of the things that I wanted to actually bring up, the reason why I was actually bringing this up, has to do with true achievements. And it's interesting to me because looking at the latest article that came out, there were some changes to Sea of Thieves. And you may not have realized this. It may not have even been something that would have caught your attention. But because True Achievements, which is the website that tracks all of your achievements in Xbox games, which a lot of people are fine kind of logging in and giving them your credentials and access to your profile and stuff. I don't really like to do that personally. I've never had the issue come up, but there have been questionable moments where I've been playing something that's under NDA and I don't really like that access getting out. If you guys remember back in the day, some of the Rare employees were hooked up to True Achievements on their home systems and they logged in and True Achievements scraped their data and pulled out all the information about the updated achievement list for GoldenEye 007 for the N64. And that's how we knew that GoldenEye was going to be coming out on Xbox. And then eventually it did. And it came out on the digital version of Rare Replay. You can still buy it separately, but we found out about that because of a leak, because True Achievements scrubs your profile every time you log in. And sometimes that's sensitive information, especially if you're reviewing games for stuff. So I think True Achievements is fine for anyone that is just like, I don't care. I don't have anything to hide, or I don't need to keep anything under NDA. No contracts here for me. So it's a good way to kind of have your stuff logged. But one of the things that got changed was Sea of Thieves achievements. And the title, and shout out to Sean Carey over at True Achievements. They typed this up, so it was nice to kind of have them. Says it appears that Rare has been tinkering with Sea of Thieves achievements. New achievements that were previously added in Season 11 have now had their requirements and gamer scores values drastically altered. And a new season or a new identical set of Season 11 achievements have now been pushed to the Xbox network. Last month, Rare added 6 new achievements to the Sea of Thieves with the start of Season 11. These achievements were completing tutorial voyages, earning a distinction in a trading company, and using the new fast travel feature, that's the dives, to complete voyages. Each achievement was worth 40 gamer score, but now these achievements have been updated, and you may have noticed that your gamer score total has gone down as a result. The original Season 11 achievements, which you may have already unlocked, are now worth 0 gamer score each. You'll also find that the requirements for each achievement have been changed to a rather generic, quote-unquote, pay a visit to X outpost. Strangely, Rare has also released the original set of Season 11 achievements again, which we have merged with the 0 achievement list to keep things simple over at True Achievements. And I'm going to have a link to this article in the show notes if you want to read through that. They say that the achievements have the same names and the same requirements and the same gamer score values as previous, which means that the total gamer score for Sea of Thieves remains unchanged. And some of these are things like the Wonder of Plunder, pay a visit to the Towering Plunder Outpost. Seeking Sanctuary, pay a visit to the beautiful Sanctuary outpost. And the gamer score for a lot of these ones to visit outposts are 0 gamer score. And then you have other ones that are like Pirate of Distinction. Earn a distinction in any trading company for 40 gamer score. Just getting started. Complete tutorial voyage for Gold Hoarders, Merchant Alliance, and the Order of Souls for 40 gold. And if you remember, some of these were ones that are kind of retroactive. So if you've been playing the game for any length of time and done any of these things in the past, you will have earned the achievement retroactively. And the point of this, I think, so I'll finish up with the article here. So they go on to say, Sean goes on to type out and says, we're not exactly sure what's going on here, but from what we can tell, Rare had some sort of issue with the Sea of Thieves achievements randomly unlocking not long after Season 11's launch. Developer had to disable achievements for all players, only recently lift that suspension for all but the Season 11 achievements added in January. And in-game warning in Sea of Thieves says that progress for achievements is still being tracked, so hopefully you won't need to go back and complete the same achievements all over again. The thing that I wanted to bring out about this ties into the PlayStation stuff, because a lot of questions have been coming over from PlayStation fans to me to kind of ask, like, get a gauge on what the platinum for Sea of Thieves would look like if they were to make a platinum. And my response has always been, well, Sea of Thieves is no longer a 1,000 gamer score game. So it's not going to be something that's that's as easy as most traditional games that only have 1,000 gamer points. So to 1K Sea of Thieves in this case is going to be 5,210 gamer score. And some of these can tend to be kind of grindy. That was something that I was always kind of frustrated with when you look at Sea of Thieves as a whole, because some of these achievements come down to the number of voyages that you actually complete when you're playing the game. So if I wanted to say, like, take a look at some of these, let me see if I can find some achievements real quick. And of course I click out of the thing that I actually wanted to check out. Looking at some of these, let's take a look. Those are all completed. I'm trying to find some of the ones that I haven't, that I know I'm close on because of just the sheer amount of things that you, or like completion, you have to hit for some of these. So like, this is, that's Monkey Island. So let's see. The merchants trade on any route along each sunken loot. So let's see. Receive the commendation for completing 250 Merchant Alliance voyages. Only 0.02% of gamers have unlocked this. I am stuck at 78%, which I've been working on. So when I've been asked by PlayStation fans, if Sea of Thieves comes to PlayStation, what's the platinum going to look like? And I tell them honestly, I'm like, there's going to be a lot of grinding. You're going to have to do a lot, especially depending on how the platinum is set up. Some of these are like owning 15 ships. I'm at 60% for that. So, I mean, I've only got like 8 ships. And a lot of it's probably because I'm not really thinking about focusing on that kind of stuff. Completing 100 Legend of the Veil quests. Only 0.01% of gamers have unlocked that. I'm at 55%. It takes a while for a lot of these. And unless you're playing Sea of Thieves only, it's going to take quite a while for you to do that. If you're playing any other game and you're trying to focus on this, it's going to take a hot minute for you to be able to get some of these done, depending on your dedication to it. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, that's the point. That's the goal. Yes, you are intended to do that. It is an online game. It is a game as a service. You are supposed to do that. It's not going to be anything that's quick. It is going to be something that you have to dedicate yourself to. But seeing that they are changing achievements, I don't know if it's because of the issues that they've had with that. Very, very possible that is, Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the correct one. In this case, I wonder if maybe the reason why they've changed some of these, especially like pay a visit to Plunder Outpost for 0 gamer score. I wonder if some of these they're using as ways to fix some of the problems that they've done with the achievements that they've had, or if some of these are them potentially working towards creating trophies that are lower tier that don't necessarily mean anything, but just kind of fill out the ranks of trophies that they would want to put in a group to say, like, you have to be able to do these to earn the platinum. And because they don't want to increase the gamer score any more than they already have, these are what you would put in as kind of fillers. and they're not hard. It's just like go to a trading or, earn it or go to an outpost. Well, congratulations. You do that enough times just by logging into the game, you're going to be good. So not a big deal, but that'll probably be like a bronze trophy. It remains to be seen. All of this is purely speculation. I just wanted to kind of toss this out because I thought it was interesting, given that they've had issues with the achievements and maybe it was tied to the way that those were implemented with season 11. It could be just them trying to get things prepped up. We've seen a lot of tutorials come out for season 11. Makes sense that they would want people to accomplish those, and that if they were going to do that, that'd be a trophy. So really love the idea that more people are going to be able to play the game. From what I've heard from people, that if this is going to be something that's going to happen, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole lot of overhead for the team. Seems like this is something that they should be able to do without any kind of delays in content. I think would be a good way to address it. We don't know that for sure, but we know that that is kind of the goal that we would like to have. Obviously I don't want to lose content because they are working on a port for other systems. That's kind of like my selfish desire, things like that. But that's kind of what I wanted to get across with this topic. All right, so while the rain is coming down outside, I thought I would take this moment to dive into Skull and Bones. This has been an interesting launch. As many of you might know or might be aware, Skull and Bones came out on Friday. There was early access through the premium version, which was $100 compared to the normal $70. And they had the open beta that was before that. And the open beta kind of just rolled into the early access and then into the actual launch. The early open beta had people carrying over progress. So anything that you tried in the open beta was carried over to the actual game. If you didn't buy the premium edition, you had to wait a few days before you could actually jump back into the game. And it's been very interesting. This has been in development for at least 10 years at this point. It started right around the time that Sea of Thieves did back in like 2015. And overall, it's been very, very unique to kind of see this experience. And I want to say that I feel bad for the dev team because they've been going through a lot. There's been a lot of layoffs, a lot of changeover at the studio. And they've genuinely just been trying to make this game. It's something that they have worked hard on. They've brought in a lot of Sea of Thieves communities, content creators to be able to kind of promote the game, give people an idea of like what it's like, what they're going to be able to enjoy, get some questions answered, to be able to better field when they come into the game and actually have people asking questions. One of the hardest questions streamers can ask is, how is this game, or you think this game's any good? So having more information going into it just kind of helps out. And I'm looking to see if I can get Fuzzy on in the future so that he and I can kind of sit down, because we had that whole plan to kind of talk about Arena and Hourglass, but also now that Skull and Bones is out, I want to jump in with him and kind of see like what his perspective's been as a content creator for it. For myself, though, I've noticed that Skull and Bones is getting a lot of flack. One of the Ubisoft guys came out and said that they're very proud of their quadruple A game, not doing them any favors at this point. I think that Skull and Bones is going to be a game that does fairly well for a while. But I don't think it's going to be a game that is really going to translate over for people who like Sea of Thieves for what Sea of Thieves is, because you just don't really get that same feel with Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones is a very different beast. And I think that there's room for both. Obviously, like right now, I don't think that PlayStation fans really have that opportunity to play a game that's like Sea of Thieves yet. And I think that'll come, but I think it's going to be a while still, probably at least until the summertime, if at the earliest, but who knows. And playing through it, kind of impressions for right now. I'm probably going to talk more about it for like XCP and stuff because we got review codes to be able to get into the game. And I've only had about maybe, actually, I'm not quite sure how long I've actually been able to get into it, unfortunately. So I don't know what my number would be for Skull and Bones, but I would say probably around, overall, I would say probably around 15 to 20 hours has been my experience over the time. Just depending on like what game, you know, like at what point have I been playing it kind of thing. But it's not an Assassin's Creed game. I don't think that they're trying to be an Assassin's Creed game, but because of the nature of the studio and what's come in before that, Skull and Bones is getting compared to that a lot. And it's a shame because I don't think that it's necessarily fair to be judged based on, you know, its predecessor. I think it should be judged on its own. Given, you know, there's always going to be people out there saying like, oh, well, look how good Assassin's Creed Black Flag looks compared to Skull and Bones. And it's like, yeah, but there's so many other things that contribute to why a game looks the way it does. Should it even be judged based on previous, you know, single player games compared to an open world multiplayer game? Those all things kind of factor in. So I've been playing a fair amount of it. Not a ton. I'm still, you know, dabbling between other titles right now, on top of like Sea of Thieves. But right now, I would say Skull and Bones is doing naval battle in a different way that is interesting and unique. I would say that the story is not compelling by any means. It feels very kind of shoehorned in. Because I think at a certain point, this game was not intended to have a campaign. So what campaign there is realistically something they were able to pull together in the last few years worth of development to kind of shoehorn in. Very much in the case that I think when Sea of Thieves first came out, Sea of Thieves didn't have really anything for people after Pirate Legend. Like there really wasn't a whole lot of Pirate Legend content when it first came out. No, you know, it took a few years and a lot of time and effort to make that, you know, that Pirate Legend content, and it's totally up to people to kind of determine if they've ever really been able to get that. But there's a lot of in-game to Skull and Bones because of the nature of the game. It is very much an MMO light, I would say, because of the number of players you can have per server. It's not very massive, but it is a multiplayer online game. And you're going to be spending a lot of your time working on leveling up different ships. There's going to be different classes of ships with both support and tank and DPS, and you're going to have to coordinate with people at the end game level to try and like make sure that any kind of challenges you take on, you have people in those roles to be able to take on larger enemies. And they've got about a year's worth of content planned. Now, it's hard to know how much of that is already ready to go. But the idea is that with each new season, there will be a new kingpin that comes into play. And kingpins are kind of the rulers of the seas. So when you become a kingpin, you start getting your own fleets. You start acquiring like resources and supplies and stuff, and you have trade routes and whatnot. And it all kind of funnels into, you know, your end game plans and what you plan to do, whether you do PvP or PvE. It's totally up to you. It is interesting that PvP is opt-in, but it's opt-in through events as far as I can tell. But with a power level system, it's going to be tough to know how much people want to engage with that at lower levels, given that at this point, with people spending as much time as they have in the game, you're going to run into players who are pretty high level, who have access and the resources to be able to make weapons that are going to fit into a build. And once you have that build, much like any other MMO, you're going to optimize it. You know, if you're playing Diablo, you're going to pick a build and you're going to work on making that build as powerful as you possibly can. And some builds are going to be more powerful than others. And if you haven't focused on that, if you haven't delved into that area of the game, any kind of PvP action that you go in for is going to be stunted, not only based on level, but also kind of based on your build, how you're playing and stuff like that. Multiplayer right now, everyone gets their own ship. You can build new types of ships as you move along, but you have to earn ranks of infamy to be able to do that by doing quests. A lot of the quests right now feel very much like busy work. You're kind of repeating the same thing over and over and over again. If you want to be able to slowly raise your infamy, I've seen some suggestions where it's better just to sail around and sink as much as you possibly can and just do the mainline quest chains to be able to open up different trade companies per se, as far as like working on different parts of the game. As you get to a certain point, things will open up, and then that will expand the amount of access you have to different things, or variety of missions and stuff. And those will differ based on, you know, who you're talking to or what kind of entity you're working for. But overall, I would say that the game looks good. It's not great. It's not amazing. I think that there's a lot of fun to be had in it. I think that sailing around with a system that respects headwind the way that Sea of Thieves does not, whereas you really can just kind of sail into the wind the entire time and still make pretty decent progress. With Skull and Bones, you really don't get that opportunity. It's something that they kind of try to dissuade you from doing because of the way that it kind of represents headwind. You know, you kind of put your hand up while you're at the helm and you're kind of covering your face because you can't really see very well, and you slow down dramatically, so you have to pay attention to that. But they also have other resources in there like stamina that you have to use, food to be able to replenish if you're trying to sail fast at the fastest you possibly can, whereas other foods and stuff can introduce different buffs. You also have a multitude of weapons, and those weapons can have augments on them, so you can get cannons, and those cannons will be just normal everyday cannons, or you can get the same type of cannon that has an affix on it that increases the amount of damage done to sails, so you can tear sails to immobilize a crew. You can also use piercing damage to like pierce through hulls and kind of cut through braced, which is their form of like you know, whenever you brace on a ship, you kind of hunker down and it kind of gives you a bit of a shield that chips away at that resource as opposed to your actual ship health. So you can get piercing to kind of negate that if you want to. You've also got things like flooding or setting things ablaze that can cause, you know, your ship, another ship to actually catch fire or to take on water faster, which will be like it's like a dot that'll kind of tick away at their health if they're, you know, flooding. But overall, it's all kind of designed around the idea of you have different styles of elemental damage, and the type of, you know, the type of ship that you build will want to have a relatively even balance of types of ammunition or types of cannons and stuff, whether it be like a ballista or torpedoes. Additionally, the higher level ship or the bigger ship that you have, the more weapon slots you can equip. So obviously you can get more power that way. So when things are being reloaded, you can shift your boat over into a different angle to be able to gain access to a different type of weapon, which tends to be a pretty good strategy. But it's going to be something that is so drastically different than what Sea of Thieves is that I don't think that there's going to be either something that will draw people away from Sea of Thieves unless they just have a genuine interest in like a pirate game, or they're just so frustrated with Sea of Thieves but still want to have that pirate aesthetic in the game that they're playing. I do think that people are blowing out of proportion on social media for the clout chasing and the you know, the baiting of rage that people want to do to be able to say like, oh, this game is terrible, look at how bad it is, these are the things that are so horrendous, how could you possibly even think that this game was going to be good? And at the end of the day, I do think that people are going to judge it harshly. And I do think that this game, being that it's a Ubisoft game, they will probably end up having a sale on this within 6 to 8 months. Come next year, if the game is still going strong and they're still putting out content for it, I can almost guarantee you that this game will most likely drop in price at some point. There is a chance that it may come to Game Pass at some point. There's also a 8-hour trial that you can startup right now if you wanted to. If you wanted to give it a shot, you missed out on the beta, but you don't want to buy it. There is an 8-hour trial that you can get to be able to actually just jump in and give it a shot. I would say that 8 hours is if you're earnest in your activities, you're trying to actually like see what you can do in the game. 8 hours is a really healthy enough time to be able to determine if Skull and Bones is going to be a game that you're actually going to want to play. I would say that if you can't figure out like what Skull and Bones is in 8 hours, chances are you probably won't like it in the end game. But there is a lot to that game. I don't pretend to say that the menu system is amazing. I think that there's definitely quirks to the way it is and how it works. And they're also just dealing with some bugs right now. There's some things that are just actually just bugged that will probably be on the top priority list of them to get a patch out soon, but I don't know that they have that ready, or if they are waiting for further analytics to be able to pinpoint what's going on with it. But at the moment they do have some bugs, not bad, but definitely bugs, and they haven't really addressed that as far as I know. But I'm sure at some point they'll either fix it and not address it, or they'll address it and then fix it as soon as possible. But at the end of the day, it's not terrible. I've had a few crashes to the desktop, or not desktop, dashboard. I've had a few crashes to the dashboard. I've also had some weird lockups at the same time. But really at the end of the day, it's going to depend on how open you are to a different pirate game. If you're very open to it, then there's probably a good chance that you'll find some fun there, because there is some fun there. And I don't think that that's giving anyone false impressions of the game. I genuinely do think that game is fun. I've been enjoying my time with it. But it's just a different beast. I was playing this weekend and doing some streaming for it because I wanted to get a pet and I wanted to be able to pass that code on to other people to get them a pet. And when I got done with it the next day, I booted up Sea of Thieves and jumped in to do some solo work on Merchant Alliance. And it just reminded me of how different the games are, how much more I really think that Sea of Thieves, at its base, has really done a smart job of ensuring that the water is just beautiful. It's breathtaking. It genuinely is the best water out there for any games. And I think that that's probably the best thing you could possibly ask for in a game where you're going to be spending a ton of time on the water. But there's definitely things that are in Sea of Thieves that are in Skull and Bones that could be in Sea of Thieves. So while I was having a really good time kind of sailing around and enjoying myself with Skull and Bones, I did notice, like, the graphics just don't look nearly as nice as Sea of Thieves. The style is different. It's just not the same. And I don't think it's trying to be Sea of Thieves. I think it's trying to be serious. I think it's trying to be very rugged and realistic in its approach. And that kind of goes out the window once you get later into the game. You start getting access to sails and cosmetic types that have like little glowy features or what they call emissives in game development. But if it's effectively just glowy stuff. They have like ghost fleets and ghost livery sets and things like that I don't really know compare that well to Sea of Thieves. I think that Sea of Thieves does it better, but I also think that they're allowed to because of the style that they chose when they were making the game. But with Sea of Thieves, one of the things that I've noticed with Skull and Bones that I would wish would actually come through to Sea of Thieves, and I think this is one of the joys of having competing games or competing platforms or whatever, competition in general. I think one of the fun things that actually comes from Skull and Bones that would be nice to see in Sea of Thieves is that sense of life in sailing. You do a lot of sailing in both games. Skull and Bones is all about the ship. Sea of Thieves is a healthy amount of the ship, but also a healthy amount of you being a pirate on an island for the most part. But one of the takeaways that I have for Skull and Bones is marine life. Seeing a whale breach and dive back down into the ocean, seeing oddly oversized dolphins swimming by a ship or near an island that is clearly like way too small for the size of these dolphins or porpoises or whatever they are. Seeing that kind of life on Sea of Thieves would be so nice. You get onto an island in Skull and Bones, and the first thing you see is a bunch of crabs scurry away and bury themselves into the sand. It's like there's little details that I think would really be a boon to Sea of Thieves. Now, whether or not that Sea of Thieves as a game can actually handle that as far as like resources and stuff, if that's something that they'd be able to do, I think is a different story. And some may argue, well, we have sharks in the game. The sharks are out there in the water, as soon as you jump in, depending on the season that you get into. You also have things like the megalodon, which breach as well. But, you don't have anything that is just kind of in the life or part of the life in Sea of Thieves that is just kind of benign. It's just there for the sake of being there. It's not trying to be anything signaling something. It's not trying to be something that is an indicator or it's just atmosphere. And we have some of that. I think the best examples are things like bats in the wild, or birds flying around on islands or above islands and stuff like that, just in certain areas. But we don't really have anything out in the sea that really constitutes a presence. Everything that's in the water is dangerous. We don't really have anything in the water that's not dangerous. So it would be nice to see something like that kind of come to Sea of Thieves, more so than just the random mermaid or the ruby splashtail that you find in the water. I'd love to see more marine life kind of come present. And the fact that we now have some competition that, competent or not, it is still competition. It's still going to be drawing attention from people who want to play a pirate game that may be frustrated with either the state of Sea of Thieves or the design elements that allow players to hunt someone down for the sake of hunting them down and not really offering any reward for the loser in that situation. It's a bad bag to be dealt, or a bad hand to be dealt, and a bad bag you want to walk around with when you lose everything in Sea of Thieves. At least with Skull and Bones, resources and stuff, that's all one thing. You can get resources fairly easily in the game. Treasure, if you're trying to get treasure turned in for the sake of reputation or just gold in general, those are types of things that can really sting. And I haven't really felt that in in Skull and Bones, because at the moment, Skull and Bones, when you sink, your stuff is there. And yes, people can come and get it, but because a majority of the game, you are just interacting with NPCs and, like NPC ships, it's less likely that you're going to lose out on all the stuff that you had. But you do have to keep that in mind. You do have to have that kind of awareness when you're sailing out and about, like how many ships are around you. Are there factions that you're currently hostile with in the vicinity? And if they are, how are you addressing those? And it's interesting. It's a unique thing. I don't think that they really punish you for working both sides of the fence on this, which is kind of a shame, because I think, as someone who is consistently pillaging and plundering ships and towns in that game, it doesn't seem like anyone's really upset with you about it. So the whole thing feels very superfluous. And at that point, you have to kind of ask yourself, like, okay, well, how invested in the world am I? And it's hard to be invested in something like that, but the opportunity is there. There's still a sense of working towards a goal, even if that goal is to be true pirate and just take what you can and give nothing back. And I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I think it's very, very nice to be able to have that as an option. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very difficult for me to care about the story of Skull and Bones if that's something that they're genuinely hoping for. When I can't even tell like who I've murdered and why their constituents on islands who are giving me quests care that I was the person. Like, I've risen enough in the ranks of infamy that people are starting to cheer when I get on a dock. They're starting to address me for the things that I've done. And a lot of those things that I've done have been killing tribal members from the different factions or companies, soldiers in the different trade companies that are present in this area. No one seems to really acknowledge the bad that I've done, except for the fact that they've acknowledged it. Like they haven't processed any of it. So they're not treating me a certain way, both the victims and the victors of the, me reaping the benefits of doing all this. And at the end of the day, it just makes me kind of sit here and wonder, it's like, okay, well, no one seems to care about who I'm killing. No one seems to care about what I'm taking, but everyone seems to care about how popular I am. It kind of feels like that weird sense of knowing the popular kid in high school and getting to hang out with them, but not really knowing like why people are being nice to you and if you should care or if there's anything that you can do to become more popular yourself so people actually do pay attention and care about you. But it's an interesting game. I've been talking to the reviewer for the IGN version of Skull and Bones. They've got about 60 hours into it, and at this point they're kind of set with their friends, but they're still having fun with it. And it was interesting to kind of hear from their standpoint that they're getting themselves kind of prepped for the potential releases coming in the first season, as well as subsequent seasons from that, because it'll be interesting to know how those all kind of play out. Do people enjoy it? If they don't, what will they do to pivot? But at the end of the day, I think that a fair amount of the Sea of Thieves streamers are all kind of in the end game at the moment, and many of them are still liking it. So I am going to be planning on hanging out with Fuzzy Bond. That's kind of like I'm setting this in my mind that I want it to be a thing that happens, at which point I want to see if there's going to be a good chance for us to be able to talk about both PvP in Skull and Bones, but also PvP in Sea of Thieves. I think that's always going to be a hot button issue. So it's going to be nice to actually like sit down and talk about like why he thinks that Hourglass failed, and how Arena needs to be something that is reconsidered for the future. So we'll kind of touch on those and whatnot, but also talk about Skull and Bones, because it seems to be something that's going to be around for a while, and we'll probably have to see how that works out. But at the end of the day, I would say that if you don't know much about Skull and Bones, the best thing I can recommend is don't necessarily worry about reviews. Go and watch some of the streamers that are playing it, because that's going to be probably the most pure version of what you will actually experience. And it's going to be something that is totally on to you. I would say that this game is worth it. I don't know if I would say that this game is worth it for the price, but that's me speaking from my perspective with the wallet that I have. However much money it is in your region, if that is enough to warrant jumping over onto it, don't feel like you're not going to get a lot of game, because I do think that this is something that has a lot of game to it. I don't know how valuable all that time is, because I definitely will say that there's a fair amount of sailing where you're just going from point A to point B on a map. But the fact that you have fast travel tends to alleviate some of those issues, just to be able to focus in on what you actually want to do in that game. Very interesting at the end of the day. I knew that it was going to be an interesting game to kind of compare to Sea of Thieves, but once we actually kind of got our hands on it and we've been able to see like what the mid to late game is going to look like, I gotta say there's really nothing here that is going to feel like Sea of Thieves for fans of Sea of Thieves that are looking for a fresh take on a pirate game. This is very much going to be something that if you are into MMO games that have power progression and allow you to build up a ship based on having a set type of artillery that kind of that works for what I guess you would like out of it, I think then you'll probably enjoy it. I would definitely say to expect that this is a lot more like a World of Warships than an Assassin's Creed Black Flag. And I would say that there's very little outside of the sense that these are both pirate games that you're going to really be able to compare those two. So let me know if you have been playing it, if you've been enjoying it. I'm pretty sure I still have the Merlin marsupial code, I think is what it is. I can't remember what type of animal it is. It's got a tail, but it's not a marmot, that's for sure. But definitely let me know if that's something that you're interested in, because I think I still have that code that it will work for a fair amount of people. So if you missed out on one of the Twitch drops to be able to get that, and you weren't streaming at the time, I think it'll work for just about everyone. I don't think that there's, I think I've only had like maybe 4 or 5 redeems at this point. So there's still, 195-ish redemptions that this code is supposedly for. So just wanted to give you all the heads up on that. All right, pirates. Well, that was kind of my first impressions of Sea of Thieves, Skull and Bones. Hopefully, if you have any further questions, I'll have gotten some more time in it that I can actually try and help address some of those, or help out, or at least get you some information from some people who have. Outside of that, we're just waiting on that patch for season 11, the mid patch. I'm very excited to kind of see like what that's like. Right now I would say that my graphics card is able to do quite a bit, but it's only getting taxed by about maybe 50% of what the card is capable of. I think it's only running at about 50% there. So it's not like it's genuinely getting like super taxed. I'm running 1080 resolution because of the monitors that I have at 60 frames per heckin second. So it's not like it's needs to do a lot, but it's at least got some time there. But I am very curious to see like what this update's going to look like, what the new loot is going to look like, and then getting into the community episode this weekend, as well as the community weekend just in general with the increased reputation and gold and stuff. It'll be very interesting. And again, I did want to just toss out there, like, by the way, because the community weekend is this last weekend of the month, keep an eye on your ledgers. If that's something that you've been working on, if you need to get stuff in your ledgers done, you need to keep up in that top tier. Just keep an eye out, because typically when they do these community weekends at the end of the month, it really tends to mess with the positions. And I don't want people to miss out on the top tier because they decided to not play this weekend to play for something else. So just as a heads up, keep an eye out for that. Also, make sure you get your drops. Make sure that you get your login bonuses. Make sure that whatever it is, make sure that you're logging in this time, getting some time in on Sea of Thieves, to make sure that you're taking advantage of that. Pirates, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for everything that you do and all the support that you give, all the comments that I see from time to time. I always appreciate, and I can't wait to look forward to what everyone's going to be talking about in the upcoming community episode this coming weekend. So definitely make sure that you're keeping an eye out for that. If you have any questions, just feel free to let me know. Other than that, we're going to see how season 11 rounds out for this first major month. And yeah, so I think that's going to do. Pirates, thank you. I love you, and I look forward to sailing with you on the Sea of Thieves.